Hey guys, last time we talked about multiplying polynomials or a monomial times a polynomial, like 3x times 2x plus 2, where you distributed 3x times 2x was 6x squared, 3x times 2 was 6x. That's multiplying. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, but another way to call it is factoring, where you're deciding or you're figuring out the factors that multiply to give a product. And here's our product. We're going to break it down into the factors that multiply to get it. The first method we're going to talk about now is called factoring by GCF. And GCF, for those of you who don't remember, is the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is the biggest number that divides evenly into a set of numbers. So let's look at looking at three numbers, 8, 12, and 32. When you were in elementary school or middle school, whenever you did factors, the way you found the greatest common factor was you listed all of the factors of 8, then you listed all of the factors of 12, and you listed all of the factors of 32, and then you circled the biggest number that was in all three lists. Well, that's unnecessary because if you think about it, one of the factors of 12 is 12. Well, 12 won't go into 8 evenly. One of the factors of 32 is 16, and 32, they won't go into 8. All you really need to do is think about the factors of 8. We've got 1, 2, 4, and 8. Okay? The easiest thing to do is first start with the smallest number. Let's start with 8 and see if it goes into all three of those numbers evenly. Of course, it goes into 8 evenly. 8 divided by 8 is 1. It doesn't go into 12. So 8 cannot be the greatest common factor of 8, 12, and 32. So we know it can't be 8. So we're going to work our way downward. We're starting with the biggest number and working our way downward, because if we start with the biggest and we work our way down, the first one we hit that works will be the biggest automatically. Okay, so let's try 4. 4 goes into 8 2 times, so it works there. 4 goes into 12 3 times. 4 goes into 32 8 times. So our greatest common factor of these three numbers is 4. 4 goes into all three of those. 4 is the biggest one that goes into all three of them. You want the greatest common factor because we're going to be factoring prime factorization, so it's factoring completely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about variables. Let's remember that x times x is x squared. X times x times x is x cubed. Okay, so thinking about that, if I am looking at three terms, let's say x squared, x to the third, and x to the seventh. Okay, and I want to think about the greatest common factor. I want the most x's. Remember, x times x is the same number. X times x times x is the same number. The most x's that I can divide into all three of those terms. Okay, x squared has 2 x's. X cubed has 3 x's. X to the 7th has 7 x's. The most I can take out, x squared only has 2 x's. I can't take 7 away from it. X cubed only has 3 x's. I can't take 7 out of that. So x to the 7th is not our greatest common factor. X squared has 2 x's in it. X times x. X cubed, does it have 2 x's in it? Yeah, it has 2 and 1 more. X to the 7th, does it have 2 x's in it? Yeah, it has 2 x's and 5 more. So all three of them at least have 2 x's. So our greatest common factor here is x squared, because it will divide evenly into all three of those. And if you're not sure about that, we can do that. X squared divided by x squared is 1. X cubed divided by x squared is x. X to the 7th divided by x squared is x to the 5th. Because remember yesterday when we multiplied variables, we added the exponents? Well, when you're dividing, you subtract the exponents. That's something you need to remember from last year. Okay, so let's get into factoring some polynomials, knowing this right here. If I have this polynomial, 10x to the 4th minus 5x squared. And I want to factor it completely. The first thing I'm going to do, and all that we're going to talk about today, there are other methods, but all that we're going to talk about right now is factoring by the greatest common factor. What I need to do, first of all, is I need to look at these coefficients and see what the greatest common factor is between those two coefficients, between 10 and 5. Okay, the easiest thing is first start with the smaller number, 5. Does 5 go into both of them evenly? Yes. So I'm going to take a 5 out. 5 is part of my greatest common factor. So if you want to write what your greatest common factor is over here, you can. 5's part of it. Now we have to look at the variables. The first term has 4 x's. The second term has 2 x's. The most I can take out of both terms is 2 x's. So I can also take out an x squared. Now, the first step is to find the greatest common factor. We found it. The next step is to divide the polynomial by that greatest common factor to find out what's left. And what's left is our other factor. So I'm going to divide both of those terms by 5x squared. And I'm just going to divide left to right. 10 divided by 5 is 2. X to the fourth divided by x squared. Remember, you subtract the exponent, so that's x squared. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. And x squared divided by x squared, those are gone. These right here, that right there is our factored polynomial. Okay? And you can always double check. If I want to double check, I'm going to multiply. 5x squared times 2x squared is 10x squared. 5x squared times negative 1 is negative 5x squared. So we're just factoring. Let's do another one. Okay, let's do negative 6x cubed plus 3x squared minus 12x. Okay, so this time we have 3 terms. This is a trinomial. And the first thing you do, whether you're going to have to use another method or not, the first thing you do is first see if there's a greatest common factor. So we're going to look at the smallest number first, 3, and see if it'll go into the rest of the terms. And 3 does go into 6, and 3 does go into 12. So 3 is part of our greatest common factor. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write down, I know 3 is part of it, and I know I'm going to divide. So I'm going to go ahead and write down the 3. Remember that if a variable doesn't have an exponent, it's understood to be 1. So the most x's that is in every single term is 1. So I'm going to divide out a 3x. And for now, it doesn't matter if you leave that negative out front or not. If you wanted to turn that into a positive, you just divide by negative 3x. It doesn't really matter. So right now, we're going to divide out a 3x. 3x is part of the answer. It's what gets distributed. Factoring by the greatest common factor is undistributing, if you will. Okay, so working left to right, negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. X cubed divided by x, subtract the exponents, is x squared. In the middle, 3 divided by 3 is 1. And this one you can write or not write, so I'm going to dot it so that you know it's optional. X squared divided by x, subtract those exponents, is x. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4, and those x's cancel. So there you go. It's factored. Let's look at a couple more types of problems, and then I'll give you some to practice on. What if you have 2 different variables? What if you have 10ab plus 4b squared, that's a b, minus, let's say, 8a squared b squared. Okay, so we've got 2 different variables, and I know this probably doesn't look like any type of polynomial or anything you've seen before, but it happens sometimes, mostly in just practice. But we're going to factor this by first taking out the greatest common factor. Now, first of all, we're going to look at the coefficients, and we're going to check that smallest coefficient. 4, it goes into 8, but it doesn't go into 10. So 4 is not our greatest common factor. So another number that goes into 4 is 2. So 2 does go into all 3 of those terms, so we're going to take out a 2. Then we're going to look at our a's. Okay, there's an a, there's an a, that's an a squared. Remember, greatest common factor has to come out of every term. Since this middle term here doesn't have any kind of a or a squared, we can't take out an a squared. A or an a cannot be part of our greatest common factor. But b's are common in all 3 terms. The most b's we can take out is b. So our greatest common factor is 2b. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to write 2b. And now I'm going to divide left to right. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Since I can't divide out anything by that a, I just bring it down. And then b divided by b is 1. It's gone. Work your way to the right. 4 divided by 2 is 2. B squared divided by b is b. Keep working left to right. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. That a squared right there, I don't have anything to divide it out by, so I can bring a squared down. B squared divided by b, subtract the exponents, is b. There's your answer. Okay. So, let me give you a few problems to practice. The directions are going to say factor completely. And let's see, give you an easy one to start with, then gradually get harder. I'll put a 9 in there. Take that out. There we go. Oh, there's a tricky one. Then how about this one? Okay. All right. Talk to you guys later.